Last Tuesday, voters in California, Arizona, Oregon, and South Dakota voted down measures proposing the medical use or legalization of marijuana. But as Paul Harvey would say, there's more to the story. Variously spelled, the word marijuana originates in Mexican Spanish. The Oxford English Dictionary cites its first printed appearance in 1873. Marijuana, as you know, is also commonly known as cannabis, hemp, Mary Jane. 14 U.S. states have decriminalized some marijuana use. Regarding so-called medical marijuana, in Arizona, 50.3% voted against allowing residents with specific medical conditions to be treated with certain amounts of marijuana for personal use. In Oregon, 57% voted against establishing a supply system of licensed dispensaries and producers. And in South Dakota, 64% voted against legalizing marijuana possession, use, distribution, or cultivation. In California, which of course has medical marijuana dispensaries and pays a reported $100 million in medical marijuana taxes, 54% of citizens also voted against Proposition 19, also known as Regulate, Control, and Tax Cannabis Act of 2010. The act would have allowed adults 21 years or older to possess, cultivate, and transport marijuana for personal use. To put the initiative on the ballot, California's supporters submitted 694,000 signatures, well over the 434,000 required. Maybe we can just take a minute and put four elements in broader perspective. One, the marketplace of debate needs credible voices and solid arguments. I just did a very cursory summary of the kinds of materials that were produced in California on this, and it's not surprising how many different voices on so many different positions there are. In today's media world, some provocations do not deserve response. At the same time, I was struck that in the California marijuana debate, even very unlikely arguments gained perhaps some credibility because they were repeated unchallenged. For example, quote, unlike alcohol, no deaths are directly attributable to marijuana use. And that to me just seems like a far-fetched argument, yet that came up again and again and again in the literature. So on occasion that some of these things need to be refuted. Second, moral authority can be lost if moral voices become just another position. I was struck by some California media contrasting the Drug Policy Alliance, how's that for a benign name, Drug Policy Alliance, with the International Faith-Based Coalition. Effectively, the Drug Policy Alliance, in my view, is a wolf in sheep's clothing, and they used the Faith-Based Coalition as a rhetorical punching bag. Third, marijuana proponents employed an effective double strategy, whipsawing public opinion and gubernatorial authority. You may have seen, despite the popular vote, in 1975, then-Governor Jerry Brown, now re-elected, reduced marijuana possession to a misdemeanor with a $100 fine. On October 1st of this year, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger reduced the penalty to a civil infraction. So whatever the voters were thinking, the executive has already taken a different kind of action on. Fourth, public opinion, of course, changes over time, and it's particularly changeable when well-funded and well-organized single-focus interest groups lobby over time through clever national and local legislative, executive, and judicial strategies. These, of course, are the public opinion no on marijuana and yes on marijuana. I was struck that we sometimes focus on the high-intensity battle, but we also have to make sure that we win the long-term war. You can win each battle along the way, but if you miss the long-term war, then we end up in the wrong place. Church implications. I happened to be in California last Tuesday on Election Day. I was reminded of the ongoing opportunity to help our members and their families understand gospel doctrinal reasons for the hope within them. We generally define, to take a specific example, the word of wisdom to include tea, coffee, alcohol, and illegal drugs. common sense dictates that not every foolish action needs specific admonition, such as not jumping into an empty swimming pool. That said, I wonder if it makes sense, if it would be helpful to our seminary students or young LDS members in California or elsewhere to be clearly reminded that popular classification of a substance as legal or illegal is not what determines obedience to the word of wisdom. And it raises, of course, the question of medical use of marijuana. Today's update, comments or questions? Elder Nelson?
Elder Jay Jensen and I had a priesthood leadership conference in Colorado Springs last Saturday, and it was time for their question and answer session. The very first question was medical marijuana, church's position. That's never happened to us before.
This morning, physical therapist that I work with, who also is posted at the hospital in Logan, said he has a patient, 27 years old, who has one tooth only. He's unmet. And he said that the woman comes to see him once in a while with about a 3-year-old girl. But just a wasted life.
I can't understand our great emphasis on getting rid of tobacco and then start a project to increase marijuana. It's so inconsistent.
Yeah, I understand there are 14 states, I believe, that allow medical marijuana, and it's so easy to get a hold of now that young people are saying they can get marijuana more easily than alcohol, which is so strictly regulated, but marijuana is kind of an underworld.
Well,
what answer did you give, Elder Nelson, on the medical?
Jay Jensen handled it.
Well, we just said that we have a bishop who is a judge in Israel, and he has the scriptures and the handbooks, and that he would counsel with the individual and teach him about the word of wisdom, but the decision is there between him and the bishop and the Lord.
And that the church has no position.
The church has no position.
That is, the church has no position specifically on medical marijuana.
On medical.
But on marijuana generally.
No, on medical marijuana, yeah. That was his question.
President, when you raise the matter of meth, that opens a whole different world, because that young housewives can cook up on their kitchen burner. And you remember some years ago, I think Brother Alex Morrison was doing a lot to get into that in this community about how widespread, too widespread, that was along the Wasatch Front.
when the revelation was given, that revelation says, given as a principle with a promise. And it was not really considered a law until the administration of Joseph F. Smith, when he had presented in General Conference the proposition that the word of wisdom be considered as a law of the gospel, voted upon and passed. All right.